Welcome to Something to Talk About from the Bainbridge Island Senior Community Center. We appreciate you showing up. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, although this week we're taking Friday off, but most Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 1:30, we meet online and sometimes also in person, which is what we're going to do today. And we talk about a variety of different subjects, and we're very fortunate today to have Suquamish elder and historian Barbara Lawrence with us. And as we do every time, I would like to start by reminding you that every part of this soil is sacred in the estimation of the Suquamish people, of the people of Chief Seattle. Every hillside, every valley, every plain and grove has been hallowed by some sad or happy event in days long vanished. We are grateful for the Suquamish who have lived on the waters of the Salish Sea since time immemorial. We honor them, and we learn from their stewardship of these lands and waters every day, and most especially today. I also want to thank Fieldstone Communities of Bainbridge Island, which offers a sponsorship for Something to Talk About. They have assisted living, independent living, and a vibrant memory care community up on Rolling Bay. To learn more about that and their day stay and respite programs, call 206-594-1010 or check out their website at fieldstonecommunities.com or just drop by for a tour. They're right around the corner from Bay Hay and Feed. And I'm going to move into our conference room where Anne is with Barbara. Hi, Anne. Hi, Barbara.
Hey, Reed. Thank you so for introducing us. I'm always so thrilled to have Barbara Lawrence here because I don't know anyone who's a better storyteller. Yeah. Right? Amen. And I have always felt like history should be fascinating. And it seems like it's a crime against nature to make history boring. And that's something you never do that. You always bring it to life in some way that makes it really accessible. And I just am sort of fascinated by your breadth. Like, you have such a huge knowledge, right? A far-reaching knowledge. And I'm excited today to learn a little bit more about the way that the Suquamish tribe looks at the year in terms of holidays or special days, and how the days that you hold sacred or important are not necessarily the same ones that appear on everybody's usual calendar. Like your Hallmark calendar might not have these days on it, right? How would you like to start us off?
So I'd like to start by saying every once in a while, Anne will call me up and say, how about a talk on cedar? How about a talk on, what is important to you? What do you feel like you need to talk about this time? And we were looking at dates. I said, I can talk about cedar. We can make it good. I can talk about cedar and I can bring lots of cedar things in. And as we were looking at dates, this one didn't work and that one didn't work. And then she asked me for today's date. And I said, actually, that day is the Suquamish Tribe's holiday. It's our sovereignty day, and the office will be closed, so that makes it easy for me. And I said, and actually, let's talk about holidays. Let's talk about seasons and holidays. So that's how this one came about. It was an accident and actually a good one.
But we will still talk about cedar.
We will still talk about
another time.
Another time, yes. So the title of this is That's Not Our Holiday. And I came up with that because I have lots and lots and lots of non-Indian friends who would invite me to the 4th of July at their house. And I'm usually working in a fireworks stand. And so that's like not the day to take off. That's a busy, busy, busy sale day. And so while it's not our holiday, we celebrate the sales that happen from the fireworks stands. And if you haven't already, one of your homegrown young men, oh my gosh, I'm going to forget his name, grew up on Bainbridge Island and traveled to the res on his bicycle or in his dad's car to buy from us every year. He then went off to college to become a documentarian, and one of his first movies was Boomtown. Oh no! And so if you haven't seen it, see it. It's that'll give you a glimpse at Suquamish and one of our That's Not Our Holiday. So also called Important Days Observed by the Suquamish Tribe and Other Indigenous People. So I'm going to start by reading a quote from Stephen Pivar's book, The Rights of Indians and Tribes. And sorry for reading, but I couldn't say it better than him. And it's like just one page and another paragraph. So this book is called The Rights of Indians and Tribes. And it's a very, very good book. You know, I use these tabs on all of my books that I think are important, and that's how important I think this book is. Approximately 500 nations were prospering in what is now the United States when Europeans first arrived in North America. They lived in communities spread all across the land. Each nation possessed its own government, culture, language, and the peoples of these nations shared a deep religious faith that centered in the sanctity of nature. Most of these people lived along the coasts or major rivers and Great Lakes as they do today. Their societies were complex and specialized. They were Indian political leaders, Indian religious leaders, Indian doctors, Indian artisans, architects, sculptors, mathematicians, food gatherers, and poets. Each nation lived off its land. Agricultural tribes developed irrigation systems, while tribes dependent on fish and game developed ways to catch, store, and preserve their food. Some tribes were nomadic, following the seasonal migrations of fish and game. Other tribes built villages and towns, some constructing housing complexes complete with gardens and courtyards. Nearly 1,000 years ago, the Anasazi Indians of the Southwest built a housing complex so large it was not until 1882 that a larger one was constructed in New York City. Commercial networks spanned the continent, and nations and tribal nations traded food, clothing, and crafts. When the Europeans arrived, most Indian tribes openly welcomed, assisted, and traded with them, allowing the foreigners to live in their territory. Sadly for the Indians, they underestimated the Europeans and were too trusting. As Professor Sharon O'Brien writes, what leaders of Indian nations did not understand, often until it was too late, was the way the Europeans viewed Indians. They were not white, they were not Christian. They were savages, wild and brutish, and in the minds of many, Europeans maintained their friendship with the Indians only when it served their own interests. And as soon as they grew strong enough to overpower the tribes, they took advantage of it. The balance of power in North America shifted away from Indians in the late 18th century, around the time of the American Revolutionary War. During this century, the population of the British colonies doubled every 25 years and increased 400% between 1700 and 1750. The population of North Carolina shot from 45,000 in 1750 to 275,000 in 1775. By 1775, as many as 50,000 whites had already moved west of the Appalachian Mountains. After colonists defeated the British, there was no stopping them in their quest for land. Indians tried desperately to hold on to their homelands, but the tide of migration was against them. The new nation, born of bloody revolution and committed to expansion, could not tolerate America as Indian country. Increasingly, Americans viewed their future as an America without Indians. So therein lies what became normal of decimating the population, disregarding the history and the contributions, and outlawing the language, culture, history, religion, ceremony, celebration, anything that was us, including family, removing the children from the family and putting them in boarding schools. And then once they're only allowing Christianity to be taught. So for us to be talking about ceremony, celebrations, holidays is really important, because we very recently had the laws that passed that made it legal for us. In 1978, the American Indian Freedom of Religion Act was passed. 1978. American Indian Freedom of Religion Act was passed. And so from there forward, we could have our own religions, our own ceremonies, our own celebrations. And so with that, tribes have been rebuilding and documenting their own ceremonies and celebrations and important times for them. And so I'm going to start then with the seasonal teachings that are printed in the book 13 Moons. And Reed is going to pull up the first one. Now, this book is a beautiful book, and it's it looks like, well, I'm going to hold it up for you guys. It looks like this, 13 Moons, First Foods and Resources, and it's created by the Suquamish Indian tribe, which is just north of here. And their first moon is the moon of windy time. It's not the first of the year. It's the first moon. It's not New Year's. And so this is late January to February, and it's the moon of the windy time. As the Suquamish say, and they're close, and we intermarried with them, and they're friends of ours. And so what happens in that time is people continue to fish for Chinook in the bays and rivers. Sea-run cutthroat trout and steelhead are also fished. Ducks, elk, geese, deer are hunted, and tool and basket construction continues for the year. Activities around the moon of the windy time focus on establishing a foundation of understanding of the 13 moons and the importance of this observation. Then we move to late February and March is the moon when the frogs sing.
Oh, and it is too, isn't it?
Yeah, the moon when the frogs sing. And this is Native New Year. When the frogs sing, that's when the frogs are singing out the winter and they're singing in the spring. And so we look forward to hearing the frogs sing. So we just celebrated Native New Year in Suquamish at the House of Wake and Culture, and it was all frog centered. There was frog shirts, and yeah, it was frog stories and frog songs and frog dances. And again, isn't that a beautiful art by the Suquamish people up there? I'm sorry, I don't know the name of the actual artist, but I'm sure in the book it says. So it's also my time of year. I was born in February, and so I come from the time when the frogs sing. Now, the next one is late March into April is the moon of the singing robin. And this is a time when fresh greens are popping up. There's still time to fish, and shellfish are harvested. Ironwood, which some people call ocean spray, is an important wood to us. And we gather that and collect it for a variety of uses. We use it for hunting, fishing, and all kinds of gathering tools and all that. Fishing spears and fishing sticks for cooking. You know, we kind of make a stand for the salmon, and that we cook over the fire, over the hot rocks in the fire. And we use that ocean spray, or what we call ironwood, for that. And they're really good for digging sticks and for long needles that are used with the cattail mats to make big, long cattail mats. And those cattail mats are the insulation inside the longhouses. And they're the floor, not the floor, they're the a pad on top of the floor of the canoe to keep your feet dry, because that's an important thing when you live in this environment. You need to keep your feet dry. Activities in the moon of the whistling robins is harvesting and creating all those products that come from the ocean spray, or what we call ironwood. Next is during much of May is the moon of the digging time. And this is because the plants and roots are dug at this time. So camas is something that is a good, a root food that we like, that you'll see us out digging them. There's a leader in our tribe by the name of Chalicum who had 2 villages. People didn't often have 2 villages. He had a village near what is called Point No Point. That's Suquamish territory, if you didn't already know that. Point No Point is Suquamish territory. And he had another village up on the south end of Whidbey Island. And the one village on Whidbey Island, he had a huge prairie that was planted and harvested with camas. And it was he had he was an important person that you'll hear a lot more about him in other events. So during this time, plant harvests and travel to bright blue camas fields. So you'll see these flowers. This one looks purple. They can be purple. They can be blue, and they're in prairies and fields, and very, very nutritious for us. Also, the Chinook run is happening. We also, okay, so then it goes on. This book is part of a curriculum, so it goes on to talk about what you're going to learn inside that chapter. But we'll go on to the next moon of the salmon berries. So much of June is the moon of the salmon berries and red huckleberries are gathered at this time. We'll be out there. We have berry baskets that are absolutely pieces of work. So if you come to the Suquamish Museum, you'll see a glass case that's full of all kinds of different baskets and burden baskets and berry baskets and purse baskets and just all kinds of clam baskets, and they all have their different purpose. And berry baskets all of them are utilitarian. Everything we make is utilitarian, but that doesn't mean it can't be artistic. And so you'll see, and if you get to look inside the basket, and some of them you can look inside, and if you see them all stained inside, that means they were actively used for berry picking. So then the next month is the moon of the blackberry. My favorite berry is the tiny wild blackberries. And I was actually able to find a source that sold starts of tiny wild trailing blackberries, and I have just the same ones, the same planters you have, those big troughs outside. I have 5 or 6 of them in my front yard, and I've got 3 of them with the tiny wild blackberries. And I tried to take them from wild and plant them, transplant them and start them, and I couldn't make it work. I'm not that talented, but I got these starts in the mail from a nursery, and they all took off. They're all multiplying, and so I'm looking forward to them. I look at them every day when I come in and out of my gate. The next moon is the moon of the salal berry. And this is something that some people think are weeds, but we certainly don't. These plants are ready to harvest during this moon and are picked, mashed, dried, and made into cakes. Well, we also mix them with other things and make them into these cakes, these dried cakes that are packed with nutrients for when you're out traveling. And when this is your home, and traveling and harvesting and camping, let's back up a little and say in the wintertime, we stayed in the longhouse. Wherever our village was, we stayed in that longhouse. Spring, summer, and fall were everywhere in the environment in our whole territory collecting. And so we have to take those foods with us that can, go with us, travel with us and all that. So we became, over the years, the scientists, the culinary artists and the scientists that figured out how to make food last, and drying and preserving is the way to do it. And so we would have all kinds of dried food that we would either rehydrate in some kind of soup or stew, or keep it in that dried form and eat it. So that would be important to us. So the next moon is much of September is the moon of the silver salmon. And that's pretty obvious. During this moon, silver salmon, also called coho, are fished. Other salmon runs continue in the bays and the rivers. Large quantities of salmon are smoked and dried and stored. We will eat some fresh. We will eat some baked, but smoking it and drying it is incredibly important to last the population to, long months ahead. There's also at this time, our late summer berries reach their peak in ripeness and are harvested during this moon. These fruits are mass dried and made into cakes, like I was saying earlier. And also during this moon and the one before, seeds are used for trading and collecting. Anything we had in abundance, we would trade with other people's other neighbors, far distant neighbors, for what they had in abundance that we didn't have. So that was important. Okay, on into late September and early October is the moon of elk mating. So if you're lucky enough to see them, they're just incredible animals. And if you just, all you have to do is take a drive up to Sequim and up to the Olympic Mountains and see these magnificent creatures. And then if you're lucky enough to hear them, oh my goodness.
It's in the fall.
So yeah,
Mating season.
yeah, this is in September. And so we also during this time is more salmon runs are happening, and the last of the fall Chinook run are entering the rivers. While dog salmon, also called chum, which is the most common salmon for the Suquamish people, are on their run. So dog salmon is lean and making them ideal for storage. Hunting also begins for larger game such as deer and elk during this time. So then much of October is the moon of the falling leaves. And during this time, I just love the fall. I just think it's the most beautiful time. No matter where you are, it's the most beautiful time. The last stalks of sockeye and humpback go up the rivers. While silver and dog salmon are reaching their peaks, fishing and drying salmon for the winter months continues, and this is the end of the harvest as plants are maturing and starting to die or just go into hibernation. It's a good time to gather nettles, cattails, salal, bracken fern, roots. Hunting for ducks, geese, and other birds begins as they return for the winter. Hunting continues for larger game, deer and elk. And yeah, we focus on making cattail mats and pemmican. Which is also what we call the cakes. We call them the dried cakes. So this is what happens in the moon of the falling leaves. So then we have much of November is the moon of the dog salmon. Again, the most common salmon for the Suquamish people. Salmon continues to be fished until the end of this moon, and the last of the bracken fern roots and camas bulbs are harvested. Shellfish harvesting begins and continues to increase the food supply to make it through the winter months. And we, of course, dry almost all of that food. Hunting winterfowl and game continues. And I don't know if you know about duck hunting in Suquamish. When the earliest non-Indians arrived by ship and were, writing about and drawing pictures of our villages, there were these long, tall poles. They weren't live trees, and they were just ever so in front of the villages. And they had no idea what that was until finally one of those discovery people, or it might have been a missionary, happened to be there during duck hunting. And what happens is the same fishing nets that we make out of twine, cedar twine that we'd use for fishing, we'd use for duck hunting, and we'd put them up on those tall poles. And then in the foggy mornings, there's even different paddles to use when you're duck hunting. They're the same ones you use for going to battle. They have a point on the paddle, and pointed paddles, the water falls silently off the pointed paddle. So that's what you use when you're duck hunting or going to war. And so you just sneak those canoes out in the water quietly, and then the nets have already been hung up the night before, and then so the ducks are in between the canoes and the nets, and then you make noise and they fly up and get stuck in the nets. And so that's an important thing to know. And it was particular to Suquamish. Not other tribes didn't do it. Suquamish did it.
Still do that?
No, we don't still do that. But it's nice to know interesting, unique things per tribe. And
That's very clever.
yeah, and that's one of ours. So now the next one is late November to late December is the moon to put your paddles away. And these are obvious time. It's too windy, it's too stormy, it's too cold, it's too dangerous. So this is the time to put your paddles away. Late December, and there's not a whole lot to say about that. You go back home, you stay in the longhouse, you stay together in the longhouse, and that's when you start, you weave baskets, you make blankets, you do all kinds of stationary arts and crafts or utilitarian items that are beautifully made inside the longhouse during this time. It's also time for storytelling. It's also time for handing down all the oral traditions to your younger people, your younger generations. It's also time when we do singing and dancing where it's like theater. There would be backdrops, painted backdrops, and people would wear masks and, blankets and just do all kinds of, it might be a song, it might be a dance, but it could be a whole story. It could be a whole family that's presenting this, this story through, inside the longhouse. It was a very beautiful, active place to be. Okay, and then the next one is late December through early January, and this is what we call the moon of the sacred time. This is our time to be together, all in the longhouse pretty much. The only thing you'd go out of the longhouse for is clams. You could get clams year round, every time the tide goes out. But other than that, you've done all your hunting, gathering, and this is a time for preparing all the things that you have, your functional items. I think this is a beautiful book created by the Suquamish Tribe, and they have a whole curriculum out of it. If you don't know, there's the Washington State passed a law back in 2015 that all local school districts would be teaching, the school districts in the state of Washington will be teaching the truths about the tribes, the history of the tribes, the contemporary information about the tribes, the treaties, all that. Teach the truth. And each school district has to have a relationship with the Suquamish tribal, with the tribal council whose land they're on. And then together, and the school districts must pay for the creation of the curriculum that they create together with the tribes, and then teach that in the public schools. I'm so grateful for that law. My job is that law. And but also because of knowing that while the law was passed in 2015 and some beautiful curriculum was written, they couldn't possibly write every lesson for every unit, for every grade, for every topic, for every school, for every tribe. So doing in that process, the school district, there are beautiful lessons out there on since time immemorial's curriculum, but through that, we need to work with the local school districts to create our own. And so that's what we're doing. And inside that, we can teach some of these. And this is what 13 Moons was created for, was Suquamish's work with their public schools. I have more information. It's about 1 hour. So I can start with going through the months of the year as the public knows it and talking about the days that are celebratory to us.
Sure, that sounds great.
In January, Ribbon Skirt Awareness Day, first celebrated in January of 2023, and it happened because up in Canada, a Saskatchewan indigenous girl who was shamed for wearing a ribbon skirt to a formal dress event. So the young lady was a 5th grader, and she was shamed and bullied for her choice of a ribbon skirt while others were wearing store-bought formal wear. An educational assistant told her that her dress didn't meet the standard requirements of formal wear. So her ribbon skirt was black and white with flowers and green and black ribbons sewn on her skirt. Her experience prompted Manitoba Senator Mary Jane McCallum to bring a bill forward to recognize National Ribbon Skirt Day, which received national support and was passed into Canadian law in December of 2022. Yes. So then became, of course, we don't care about the border between Canada and the United States. All of these tribes went freely back and forth. There wasn't that kind of a border for us for thousands and thousands of years. And so it's just this new little irritation that we have to deal with. And so we honor each other's sacred days and important days, and we celebrate with each other those important dates. And so, all tribes in both nations celebrate this too in one way or another. And there's also, during the pandemic, became something called ribbon skirt every day. And so every single day, well, during the shutdown, people were having tutorials on how to make ribbon skirts and then how to wear your ribbon skirt, dress it up, dress it down, you know, and then do ribbons around the bottom of your slacks and all kinds of things, and get kind of crazy. This one, and this one are all made by me with either a granddaughter or my friend Mary Terry, who you might know from Bainbridge Island, because I don't consider myself a seamstress, and but I absolutely wanted to make ribbon skirts, and so I was at her house with lots of fabric and ribbons, and how do I do this and how do I do that? And she was an angel with me and my granddaughter, teaching us different things, and they can come in all colors and all shapes and all sizes and all kinds of different materials and overlays, and they get all fancy. And so yeah, it's you can wear them every day for anything. Wear them with a t-shirt, wear them to a wedding, you know. So, and now how did they come to be? When the non-Indians were coming across from the east to the west in wagon trains, and they had stuff all wrapped up in cloth and tied shut with ribbons. And then when they got to where they were building their cabins and becoming settlers and colonists, they would discard this cloth and these ribbons to the natives. And then natives said, okay, fine, and took it and turned them into ribbon skirts and ribbon shirts and ribbon dresses and all that, and fancied them up. And over time, we just kept going with it. So that's a little bit about January. Another thing that happens specifically to Suquamish in January is our treaty was signed on January 22nd, 1855. And so we have what's called treaty talks. So if you hear about it, please come, because it's an open event to the public that we have. Sometimes it's at the House of Awakened Culture. Sometimes it's at another building, but it'll be advertised if you go to our website and keep track on our website. And every year we focus on a different topic that's important to our treaty. This last time was about Indian Child Welfare Act, because it came under possible
Attack.
well, it came under attack by some non-Indians again, even though it was passed in 1978 as well. That was another thing that was passed in 1978 was the Indian Child Welfare Act. And so we focused on the ICW law in the treaty talks this last January, and next year it'll be a different topic. Hopefully not one that is under attack.
Right. But say a little something, because I know some people have said to me, oh, I don't think you're allowed to go to those. Those are just for the tribe. So, you know, where are people welcome?
So to almost everything we put out, to almost any event that we have, I mean, if you don't hear about it, those are the ones that you're not going to be invited to if you don't hear about them, right? And then, like, we just had this whole last weekend was our general council meeting, which is our annual elections. And so you're not invited to that. No non-Indians are allowed there. I mean, there's some that we need, you know, we need to be tribal members. We need to be active in using our sovereignty. So we have to have some, like, we'll let some lawyers in, and we'll let some IT specialists in, and this and that. But mostly we want it to be tribal members only in the room. And there was almost 500 of us, and there's 1,200 Suquamish tribal members. And so almost 500 of us were at Kiana Lodge this whole weekend and had our elections. And that comes up later in the year. So I'm going to keep going with this, but you pretty much won't hear about the ones you're not invited to. We're not going to tell you about our sweat lodge ceremonies. We're not going to tell you about those kind of things, you won't hear about them. But if you see it on the website, you're invited. If you see it on our website, you're invited. And these are things we want the public to know about, because that's how you learn about us. That's how you get to know us. That's how you get to hear really great speakers talk about important topics. At the treaty talk this last time, there was a young non-Indian documentarian, and I'm not going to remember his name either, but a different guy from the one with Boomtown. This film was called the Kings of Gorst.
Oh, yeah.
And this is salmon. This is this particular salmon run, and he was a fisherman who would be fishing in Gorst and be mad at the tribal fishermen. And he learned through a process of getting to know how that salmon run became in existence and why it was important to us and what it was all about. It so turned him around in his thinking that he thought it was that important to make a film about it. And so it's just a short, and it's very important. So if you get to see the Kings of Gorst, please do.
How can we? Because I saw that talked about and I couldn't find anybody to get a hold of to find out how we could show it or how we could.
And here's where I get to admit, I don't know the answer. And so, but I will find the answer and I'll get it back to you.
That sounded like something
Yeah.
people would be really interested in
It's
seeing.
really a good movie, and it was a really good treaty talks that we had.
One other thing, I remember that movie, that the man that did it, that got turned around, realized that what the tribes were doing, the tribe was doing, was actually making the salmon more plentiful for all. He started from thinking the tribes didn't eat all the salmon, and then once he learned what was going on, he's like,
So rather than saying that the person who made this documentary started off feeling like that maybe that the tribe was getting special benefits that were taking away from other people, but in fact realized that the tribal efforts were saving salmon and making the waters cleaner and all those things. Yeah, so that really, we're going to try to find a copy of that so we can show it to everybody. That would be great.
Now we move, also sometime in January is Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women Trafficking Awareness and Stalking Awareness. And we have an office of professionals who work on this topic throughout the year. And in different months, they focus on different parts of missing and murdered Indigenous women issues and any issues important to women, Native women in this way. In February is Native New Year, which we already talked about. Also in February, Teen Dating Violence Awareness, also put on by that same office, and that office is the Suquamish Tribe's Integrated Victims Services, which are just comprehensive. If you are a Native woman in need of services, contact the Suquamish Tribe's Integrated Victims Services. And if you just even called the front desk and said, I need help, they get you to the right office and the right people, the heroes over in that office.
is that just for Suquamish tribal members only, or all tribal women, families?
And I don't know the answer there again, so I will find out. And what I want to say it's for any Native women. So, but I will find out. We move to March, Sovereignty Day. The third Monday in March is Sovereignty Day, which is today. And we created that holiday for Suquamish people because of the weekend that we just went through, which is by our Constitution. And yes, we have our own Constitution. We have the Suquamish Tribe Constitution was thrust upon us, not created by us. It was thrust upon us by the federal government. We have modified it several times over the year. We have amended it several times over the many years, and we just amended it again yesterday. So we because they were pretty much cookie cutter constitutions that went to all the tribes. And so we had to, as soon as we had self-determination, which will come up later in this calendar as well. As soon as we had self-determination to be able to change our constitution, we did that. And we've been doing it since. Now, what I have to say here is that before contact with non-Indians, for thousands of years, we had our form of government, and I'm a beginner Lushootseed speaker. Lushootseed is our own language and the language of this land. So I'm just learning, and I don't know how to say this, but in Lushootseed, translated then into English, our form of government is called having a say. And how it worked pre-contact to non-Indians was there would be a gathering of people, and there would be an issue. And every single person there had a say. And if it took 3 days and nights for everybody to have a say, that's what it took. And only when everybody had a say did the leaders, and there was multiple, there wasn't a single chief, there wasn't a word chief. There was a group of leaders, some men, some women, and they would go off and, discuss all the having a say, and they would render a decision. So now sometimes Chief Seattle is known to have been so patient with having a say that he listened to everybody all day and night, all day and night for as long as it took. He was just he was raised up inside it. It's not something he created. He was taught by his elders who were taught by their elders who were taught by their, this is how it had been. Now then, when he passed away and his son became the leader, and it's not always that, there's not an assumption that somebody's son is going to be the leader. I think, and I don't have proof, that son decided he was the leader. But he didn't have any patience. He didn't have the patience it took to listen. And so when after a few of those having a say events happened and he just blurted out a decision before everybody had a say, then everybody had a say without him. And then the next time there was a big community-wide gathering, then everybody stood up at once and turned their back on Jim Seattle and faced Wahalchu. And that's how Wahalchu knew that he was a leader. And that's how Jim Seattle found out he wasn't the leader anymore. That was having a say.
Yeah.
So
Can we do that, right?
you can do whatever you want. So general counsel, so we still do having a say. It's not called that. It's now called something like comments from the floor, but it's having a say. And like I said, we have general counsel is the third Sunday in March, and then so Sunday, but we knew that one day wasn't enough, so we stretch it out to be Saturday and Sunday. And Lena's been through some of these as a staff member. She's been there for us. And we actually start meeting on Friday, the Friday before that Sunday, and start having events for families because they're coming in from wherever they live. Some of them live locally. Some of them live in other counties. Some of them live in other states. Some of them live in other countries. And they don't all come home. If they did, there'd be about there'd be more than 1,200, less than 1,300, more than 1,200 Suquamish tribal members. And but we had almost 500 yesterday, so that's a pretty good percentage of people to come together to have our general council. All of Saturday is every department from the tribe, almost every department from the tribe gives a report for their whole department for their whole year. And then and that's kind of a practice for Sunday, because Sunday, every tribal member signs in when we reach a quorum, which is a percentage, which I don't have the answer for if you're going to ask me that question. I don't know it's a percentage of the entire adult population of the tribe must be signed in to have a quorum, and meaning be able to pass mandates and vote on important issues, including elections of our leaders, which we did yesterday, elect 3 people. There's seven tribal council members. We never, ever, ever elect all 7. So we need continuity. We know we need continuity. So we only elect 2 this year, 3 this year, it goes like that. So we had elections for 3 positions. One person got reelected, that's Jay Mills, got reelected. And then 2 people who were in positions chose not to run again, and they happen to be two men. And Rich Purser and Sammy May both chose not to run again, and 2 women were elected. Azure Beret.
Oh,
and-
wow.
And come on, Laura Lee Morissette. And that makes 4 women on a 7-member tribal council. So that's now, I'm not saying it never happened before. People are going through the historical records because somebody thinks maybe in the late 70s or early 70s, there might have been 4 women on council at one time, but it's been a long time. So, but it's not unheard of for women chairpersons and leadership. It's nice.
Yes,
Have
it is.
Majority.
Yes, it is.
So that happened yesterday. We'll move to April. Again, the Suquamish Tribe's Integrated Victim Services always has something going on. And for that month, it's Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So there's always an event around any of these things. There's usually a dinner, there's usually information, there's usually, things to take home and like put on your refrigerator or put by your phone or, whatever, so that you have information at your fingertips. Earth Day, April 22nd. I know it was started by hippies, but it's a good thing.
Hey.
For
Hippies are a good thing.
Hippies have their place. I know it was
It's right next to you.
It's right next to us, but sometimes they need to be put in their place too.
Well, I'm sure that's true. But this we have in common for sure,
This we
right?
have in common. And so I know it was started by hippies, but it's definitely something that's close to us because as you saw by our calendars of the months of what was important to us, we were for thousands of years so close to the ground, so close to the water, so close to what's happening that it was imperative for us to know to leave those clams alone over there and go dig over there, leave those roots along over there and go dig over there. Then when we monitored this and paid attention to this, through our whole time, we knew like we don't gather cedar until the dogwood blooms. So when the dogwood blooms, when I see those flowers, I'm like, cedar, it's time for cedar. And as climate change happens, and I'm going to say this again and again, climate change is real. Climate change is real. Climate change is real. And we must, to every single one of us, make a difference and care for this earth. We don't have to wait till Earth Day. It doesn't have to be one day of the year. We need to make a difference.
Getting a lot of applause from the.
We need to make a difference. Now, the 4th weekend in April is Suquamish Renewal Powwow, celebrating healing, acknowledging continued healing and those who are in recovery. But it's not limited to those people. Everybody can come to the House of Awakened Culture and celebrate the Suquamish Renewal Powwow. Buy art directly from our vendors, buy food, native food directly from our vendors, watch people have fun and celebrate and participate. And so that's just the 4th weekend in April. It's coming up.
Can non-natives volunteer for things?
Oh, yes, we have a volunteer hotline and I'm not going to know the number, but if you just call the front desk of the Suquamish Tribe, we have a whole office of volunteers and and once you get registered in and vetted and all that, then they will send out text messages to you about, you want to volunteer at Canoe Journey? Do you want to volunteer at this? All kinds of things. Help elders with something, it's all kinds of things to be a volunteer for. May 5th is Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and People Day. That very day is a big deal day for us. It's so sad that we have to have a day to make people aware of this and that it's an issue in this not just the United States, but Canada too, and probably worldwide. And that any women are disposable. And then once that, then for the institutions that are supposed to protect, you like just dismiss that issue. Now, we do share holidays with non-Indians that we think are important, and most of those are around veterans because when non-Indians wouldn't hire natives, where we could always get hired is in the armed services. And armed services make sense to us anyway because that's before there was non-Indians, we had people who would stand in front of villages at the waterfront watching and watching and watching for enemies to arrive or for friends to arrive. And they could tell because there's a way that you pull in a canoe if you're coming to be friends and if you're coming to wage war, and it's very obvious. And so they would alert the village to for the elders and the children to hide if it was enemies, and all able-bodied men and women to get in canoes and try to keep the battle on the water. So these are what you would call military people, men and women. And so men and women of all tribes joined the armed forces. It didn't have to be a war, didn't have to be, it was just, it made sense. And so we have the most of all populations in the United States and probably Canada. We have more Indigenous people in armed services by ratio than any other population. So what that is to say is Memorial Day, the last Monday in May, is absolutely a day that you will see our people out taking care of our cemeteries and our people that were lost at war. June, what comes with June? Pride Awareness Month. And we have a Suquamish Pride March on or as close to June 28th as possible, and everybody's welcome. It's a parade in downtown Suquamish and Suquamish Way. And and here's where I get to teach you a little bit of language lessons. In the Lushootseed language, I don't know how to say it, but in the Lushootseed language, there's a word for woman, and everybody else is non-woman. There's woman, there's these two words, woman, non-woman. And there's a lot of other genders in that non-woman. It's not just men, it's all the others. Woman, non-woman. So that says something.
It does. Last year, some of our queer elders went to that Suquamish Pride Parade and they felt so welcome. That was really beautiful.
It's a fun event. It's a really fun event. We really know how to do events, and you guys are all welcome. So women and non-women are welcome to that event. Independence Day, not our holiday. Not our holiday, but we celebrate it in ways that you wouldn't realize. Because again, Indigenous people were not hired by non-Indians for regular jobs for generations. And we were not allowed to live in our communal way, hunting, gathering, fishing, sharing, and caring for each other. And those millennia of ways of life were so rudely interrupted and forbidden and even punishable by law. At the same time, we are not being hired by non-Indians for paying jobs to support our family. Employment that was hiring Indians was logging and lumber mills, fish canneries, oyster canneries, berry picking, and the military. So as we began to fight for our legal rights and separate and different American citizen rights, we got the Native American civil rights, not the, like you guys call civil rights, and we have the American Indian civil rights. So as we get these, and then we get to enact our own civil rights and our own sovereign rights, we figured out along the way that we could import and export and sell on our reservation without being taxed by the state of Washington. And I mean, it wasn't easy. There was legal fights, but between tribes and the state of Washington, some like say Puyallup won some of our rights for us, not for us Suquamish, but for other. If they won for us. If we won for the other tribes too. And then if we lost, like we did with the Oliphant case, we lost for all the tribes in the whole United States, which isn't. So anyway, I digress. So So we, because of other tribes fighting for the right to sell things like cigarettes and fireworks, then that became a serious little tiny business for, 2 months of the year, where it made a difference for families who didn't have real jobs, a big difference. And then you get your little local guy making documentary, which is awesome. In July also comes Canoe Journey. It starts somewhere in July and ends either on the last day of July or the first day of August. And that's whoever is the host tribe decides their week that they're celebrating on their lands. And so then you back up however long it takes people to go from where they're at to that host tribe. So it could be the whole month of July that somebody's traveling from South Alaska all the way, or from Oregon coast up. So who's ever the farthest away, that's how long it's going to take. So who's ever the host tribe. Who's the host tribe this year? We don't know. So several years ago, Suquamish said we'll be the host for 2024, but then a few years ago, we said, sorry, we really want 2029 because that's our year. It started in 89 in Suquamish, and then we've been hosting on the 20th anniversary, and so we want to host it again on 29. So we said yes, and then we said no, sorry, we didn't mean that. And so a tribe up in British Columbia, a house it said they would, and then they weren't ultimately able to. Making a commitment like that is making a few $1 million of a commitment. And when you're a smaller tribe, you need the help of lots of other tribes to pull it off. Those guys don't have casinos up there, so they don't have that kind of money. And so if we weren't all able to like throw it together for them really fast, then it just wasn't going to happen. We think Puyallup's going to host a youth paddle, and things are kind of being whispered about. And so we'll see. It's kind of late for it to be a full on everybody. So it might end up being local tribal polls.
One thing people might not know either is that because of the faraway tribes, and there's many of them that travel to the hosting tribe's land, that there's stops along the way at various tribes that will do mini hosts, if you will. And I'm not sure what people do. It's not just a one day, I'm coming straight through. It's literally a journey amongst. So, yeah.
Chief Seattle Days is the third weekend in August, the third full weekend in August. So always the third full weekend in August. And that's been going on since, well, it started in 1911, but then there was in World War II, they stopped for the war years, but they didn't get started back up until 1962. And so then it's been going ever since. And that's everybody is welcome. Everybody is welcome. Women and non-women. Everyone is
So
welcome.
that was the third weekend?
Third full weekend in August. So full weekend. So September, again, by the Suquamish Tribe Integrated Victim Services is Suicide Prevention Awareness. And that's a really big deal. It's all about purple on that day for some reason. And there's, again, there's information and training on how to intervene. If somebody says to you, "Oh, I'm not going to do this anymore," there's things for you to listen to, and regular folks can save somebody's life through a few simple things to say and do. And I went through that training, and I highly recommend it. Labor Day is one of those things that we join with all of our neighbors in honoring that hard work and celebrate with you. Right after that is Orange Shirt Day on September 30th each year, or as close to, if it's not a Monday, September 30th is important. However, it'll be on a school day or a Monday through Friday day, because it's really important that this is observed in the schools. So up in Canada, again, a young person was being taken off to boarding school, and her grandmother bought her an orange shirt. brand new orange shirt, and she was so proud of it. And when she got to boarding school, they took it away and she never saw it again. And one of the stories of the tragedies of their lives of people, boarding school survivors, talking about what their time was there is that little story. So the orange shirt from that story became something now that we wear an orange shirt. And native, not just any orange shirt, any orange shirt will do, that'd be fine. But we have somebody in our tribe, we have several artists, and somebody makes a design and then the tribe prints it off, and then employees and kids, school kids, everybody, whole families, everybody gets given an orange shirt to wear in honor of that day. And there's a celebration around it. We're not celebrating that somebody's shirt got taken, and we're not celebrating that boarding schools happen. We're celebrating that these survivors no longer have to go to boarding school, and that they are freely able to talk about their experience, and that we have a much better education system, even though we still have a lot of work to do. So it's a awareness day. It's one of those kind of days. October, domestic violence awareness and anti-bullying. These are events that happen in Suquamish. They're actual events that happen. Indigenous Peoples Day is the second Monday in October. Some people call it Columbus Day. We don't. Both U.S. President Biden and Washington State Governor Jay Inslee have made proclamations to honor Indigenous peoples with a day of honor, though neither has made a state or national holiday for Indigenous people yet. There is no national holiday for Indigenous people. Yet. So what's interesting to note is in 2023, 195 cities and 23 states have replaced Columbus Day with Indigenous People Day. Some of those are official holidays and some of those are proclamations. For the Suquamish Tribe, it's a paid holiday and the government offices are closed. This holiday is observed on the second Monday in October, and it's Indigenous Peoples Day. Moving to November is Veterans Day, which again, I told you already, the reasons why we hold up our veterans in high esteem and we take care of them. And there's what we call the Suquamish Warriors. It's a nonprofit. It's also a building and an office and people there to take care of veterans, one staff person and others are volunteers to make sure that, and if you come to any of our events, you're going to see them bring in the flags and retire the flags and all that. They're very much a part of everything that happens. On that day, we'll celebrate at the beautiful, you can't miss this memorial, this Veterans Memorial in Suquamish. If you drive through, you can't miss it. It's 4 house posts that are carved and 2 marble canoes on a wall. And if you have any relationship to the Suquamish Tribe whatsoever, you're a member, you live there, you work there, you're a shirt tail relative, you mowed a lawn in Suquamish, and you're a veteran, we'll put your name on those marbled canoes up there. We celebrate and care about all veterans. A lot of them are women. Some are non-women. Okay, Thanksgiving, it's not our holiday, but we will take the day off. We will take the next day off. We will take the weekend off. We will buy turkeys and hams and all that kind of stuff. We don't celebrate it the way non-Indians do. It's been so long that the truth about Thanksgiving and the first Thanksgiving and the 85th Thanksgiving, I mean, those people where the first so-called first Thanksgiving happened, it wasn't the first Thanksgiving. It was maybe for non-Indians it was, but even that, I mean, that's its whole story. It's a whole nother 2 hours of talking about that. Suffice it to say, I think it's wrong for school teachers or non-Indians to ask little Indian kids, do you celebrate Thanksgiving? That's putting a big sophisticated question to little kids who are looking forward to, pumpkin pie and whipped cream. They don't know all that we know, and that and they will learn as they grow. I don't say Merry Christmas or Happy Thanksgiving. I say Happy Holidays, Happy Sacred Time, whatever that is to you, So for the longest time, we were forced to celebrate non-Indian holidays, to celebrate specifically Christian ones. And so that's just not going to happen anymore. Then the Suquamish Tribe has what we call winter holidays, where we shut down the tribe the day before Christmas, and we don't open it until January 2nd. And that's usually more than a week of us being together with our families, paid days off for tribal employees. So hundreds of them are not Suquamish. You know, there's over 400 employees of the tribal government, over 700 employees of the Port Madison Enterprises. That's more employees than there are Suquamish tribal members. So lots of them, hundreds of them are non-Indians who work for us. So yes, you can work for us. Yes, you can work for us. Yes, you can come to our events. Yes, you can come to our whatever it is. And we usually serve food, and it's usually really good food. So come to those. Now that we're at 2.5 hours, I'm going to go really quickly through these days worth celebrating. January 4th in 1975 was Indian Self-Determination Act was passed into law. And so that's a day that we celebrate. And Indian Self-Determination Act was incredibly important for us to have the right to determine our own tribe's decisions, our own tribal governments, our own tribal decision. And inside of that is hiring practices that for Native preference. On February 12, 1974, U.S. District Court Judge George Bolt rendered his decision that some of us say we lost 50% of the fish, but we were guaranteed 50% of the harvestable fish, and for the tribes in the Puget Sound. May 17th, 1954, Brown versus the Board of Education. That's a holiday for us too, not just for the Black people who fought that valiant fight, but it changed it for Indians and Indian boarding schools as well. Because some would say that boarding schools are not fair and equal, because they're not. AIRFA, American Indian Freedom of Religion Act, happened in August 11th, 1978, and we're going to continue celebrating that one forever. October 17th, 1988, Indian Gaming Regulatory Act. That's what actually limited our gaming, because we were already gaming before then, or somebody was already gaming before then. And so that came in and limited our gaming, but still it's worth celebrating what we have. November 8th, 1978, Indian Child Welfare Act. And this is still being battled. This is still, we're as recently as June 16th, the Supreme Court rendered a decision in favor of Indian child welfare. And who was funding the lawyers against this was not families. It was gaming interest from Nevada. So okay. So we might win a battle, and we might win a battle at the Supreme Court, and but we still have to continue protecting those rights. And so then there's a reading list that is there that I'm aware of the time, but I also brought our tribal calendar. Now it's in the regular January through December way, and there's just 4 of them, so you can share these how you will.
Barbara, thank you.
And then I also have this. I'm not going to give this up, because this is what a general counsel handbook looks like, that every tribal member gets when you walk in the door. And there's like classified financials in here, so I'm not going to share it with you. But there is what I would like you to notice is there's a tribal council, and then we have executive boards. We have boards of people that the tribal council appoints. We have the Port Madison Enterprise Board. We have the Suquamish Tribal Gaming Commission. We have the Suquamish Seafoods Board, Suquamish Housing Board, Enrollment Committee, Suquamish Foundation Board, Suquamish Museum Board, Child Welfare Board, Higher Education Board, Cultural Committee, Constitution Committee, and Community Police Advisory Board. Those are all executive boards appointed by tribal council to help run the very complex government that is the Suquamish Tribe. Our very impressive organizational chart has general council is at the top. That's every voting member of the tribe. Under them is tribal council. Do you understand what I mean? The general council elects the tribal council. So we're on top and the tribal council is there. Then we have the executive director, and then we have these different categories. There's administration, there's thriving workplace, there's prepare for the future, there's healthy community, and there's infuse culture into everything. And inside those categories are interesting separate departments. So I just wanted you to see that those overarching categories have DCD, Department of Community Development and Housing, and child support enforcement and whatever. But they're under these categories that are positive framing.
Well, Barbara, you never fail to bring plenty of information to us, which we're very grateful for. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.